I'm leaving him, Mom. I can't be married to a school teacher with hands like a carpenter's anymore. I deserve more. Caleb says I can become a co-host on his podcast. The grocery bag in my hands suddenly felt impossibly heavy. A carton of milk, some apples, and the expensive chocolate-covered almonds Emma loves so much. My body remained perfectly still, while my mind raced ahead, processing what I was hearing. And honestly, Emma continued with that familiar, dismissive tone she used when discussing me with her mother, I don't want to drag him along when I launch my lifestyle channel. I need freedom, both financial and social. Her mother's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Darling, I told you from the beginning he was just a stepping stone. A nice enough man, but not husband material for someone like you. You need someone with ambition, with connections. I know, Mom, you were right. Another laugh, lighter this time, almost girlish. The sound I once found endearing now hollowed me out. Anyway, I've already found us an apartment. Caleb's helping with the deposit. I'm telling Lucas tomorrow. I silently placed the groceries on the hall table, careful not to make a sound. Water continued to drip from my jacket, forming a small puddle at my feet. I turned and walked back out the way I came, closing the door without a sound. Only in my workshop, sitting in the handcrafted mahogany chair that had been my weekend project for months, did I allow myself to think. There was no anger, no shouting, no dramatic confrontation scene like in the movies. Just a perfect, cold clarity washing over me as I watched rainwater cascade down the roof gutters I'd installed last summer. Oddly enough, my first thought wasn't about Emma's betrayal or my marriage ending. It was about my grandfather Morgan's words the day before he died, his weathered hand gripping mine with surprising strength. Patience, Lucas. The right move at the right time. That's how the Morgans have survived for generations. Watch, wait, then act decisively. At 40 years old, I was about to find out if I truly was my grandfather's heir in more than just name. The next morning, Emma found me making coffee in the kitchen, dressed for work in my usual button-down shirt and slacks. Her steps faltered when she saw me. She'd clearly expected me to have left already. Morning, Raham, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Want some coffee? Sure, she replied, studying my face carefully. She was wearing her silk robe, the one I'd given her for our 5th anniversary. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, even though she'd just gotten up. Emma never looked unprepared for anything. I poured her a cup and slid it across the counter. She took it hesitantly. Lucas, we need to talk. I nodded, taking a sip from my own mug. About you leaving me? Her eyes widened, the mug stopping halfway to her lips. How did you... I came home early yesterday, heard you on the phone with your mother. Oh. The single syllable hung in the air between us. To her credit, she didn't deny anything or attempt to explain it away. Instead, she squared her shoulders and met my gaze directly. Then you know, I think we should get divorced. I nodded again. I agree. This clearly wasn't the response she expected. Emma had prepared for tears, for pleading, for a fight. My calm acceptance threw her off balance. You agree? Yes, you're right. We want different things. There's no point dragging this out. She hesitated, then pressed on. I was thinking we could do this amicably. No need for a long court battle or anything messy. Absolutely, I said, my voice still steady. In fact, you can have everything. The house, the car, the dog, even your mother's dinnerware set you're so fond of. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Everything? Everything. I don't want any of it. Just my tools and personal belongings. A flash of triumph crossed her face before she caught herself and arranged her features into an expression of sympathetic concern. That's very generous of you, Lucas. Are you sure? I'm sure, I said, finishing my coffee and placing the mug in the sink. I'll move out this weekend. I can stay with my brother for a while. Emma nodded, relief evident in her posture. I think that's best. I've spoken with a lawyer. He can draw up the papers. If we're both agreeable, this could all be over within a month. Perfect, I said, grabbing my keys from the counter. Text me the details. I need to get to school. As I walked to the door, she called after me, Lucas, are you okay? I turned and gave her a small smile. I will be, Emma. We both will be. The look of confusion on her face as I closed the door behind me was the first genuinely satisfying moment I'd experienced in months. As I drove to Rochester East High School, the rain started again, a light drizzle that matched my mood. The school parking lot was half empty. I was earlier than usual. I sat in my car for a moment, watching raindrops trace patterns on the windshield, thinking about the surreal conversation I just had with my soon-to-be ex-wife. 8 years of marriage ended in less than 5 minutes over morning coffee. No tears, no screaming, just a calm exchange about logistics. It should have felt wrong somehow, tragic. Instead, I felt only relief, like putting down a heavy load I'd been carrying for too long. My classroom was empty and dark when I unlocked it. I flipped on the lights, revealing posters of historical figures and maps that covered every wall. My sanctuary, the one place where I felt completely in control, completely myself. The first students wouldn't arrive for another hour. I used the time to grade papers, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of reading, commenting, marking. By the time the first bell rang, I had almost forgotten about my disintegrating marriage. Almost. "Mr. Reed, are you okay?" The question came from Lily Chen, one of my most perceptive students, as the class filed in for first period. "I'm fine, Lily," I replied, mustering a genuine smile. "Just a little tired." "You look different today," she persisted, setting her books on her desk. "Like something's changed. Kids could be eerily intuitive sometimes." "Nothing important," I assured her. "Now, who can tell me about the significance of the Treaty of Versailles?" Teaching carried me through the day. In the classroom, I wasn't Lucas Reed, the soon-to-be divorced husband. I was Mr. Reed, history teacher, guide to the past, mentor to young minds. It was the role I'd chosen for myself, regardless of my family name or the fortune that might someday be mine. There was authenticity in it that Emma had never understood or respected. During my free period, I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Emma and a text message. "Brett Donovan's office, Thursday at 3. Please confirm you can make it." I replied with a simple "confirmed" and put the phone away. No point in dragging things out. Clean, quick, done. Brett Donovan was exactly the type of lawyer I expected Emma to hire. Expensive suit, aggressive handshake, and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. We met at his downtown office, all glass and chrome, with a view of the Rochester skyline that was clearly designed to intimidate clients. "Mr. Reed," he began, sliding papers across his desk toward me. "These are fairly straightforward. As per your agreement with Mrs. Reed, you're relinquishing all claims to the marital home, vehicles, and joint accounts. You're also agreeing to waive any claim to alimony." I nodded, skimming the documents. "And Emma keeps her own retirement accounts? I keep mine?" "That's correct. Given your profession, I imagine hers is more substantial anyway." The condescension in his voice was almost comical. If he only knew. "Is there anything else?" I asked. Brett exchanged a glance with Emma, who was sitting primly in the chair beside me, her leg crossed at the ankle, designer purse clutched in her lap. "Well, there is the matter of future earnings," Brett said smoothly. "Mrs. Reed is on the verge of some exciting career opportunities that could significantly increase her income. We'd like assurance that you won't make claims against those earnings in the future." I fought back a smile. "Of course. Caleb's podcast must be quite promising." Emma stiffened beside me. Brett recovered quickly. "Among other opportunities, yes. So you agree?" "Absolutely. I want nothing from Emma's future endeavors. And I trust she wants nothing from mine." Brett nodded. "That's the idea. Clean break." I picked up the pen he'd placed before me and signed each document where indicated, taking my time, reading thoroughly. When I finished, I handed the stack back to Brett. "We'll file these as with the court tomorrow," he said. "Given the uncontested nature, everything should be finalized within a few weeks." "Excellent," I replied, standing up and extending my hand. "Thank you for making this painless." Brett seemed almost disappointed as he shook my hand. Men like him thrived on conflict. A simple, amicable divorce probably meant a smaller fee. Emma walked me to the elevator. For a moment, away from her lawyer's watchful eye, her mask slipped. "I never meant to hurt you, Lucas." I know, I replied. You just meant to use me until something better came along. Her cheeks flushed. That's not fair, isn't it? The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. Goodbye, Emma. I hope you find what you're looking for. As the doors closed on her stricken expression, I allowed myself a small, private smile. Phase 1 was complete. The next few weeks were a masterclass in carefully crafted appearances. I moved into my brother's old hunting cabin on the outskirts of town, though I told everyone it was his spare room. I drove my backup vehicle, a rusted pickup truck with manual windows and no air conditioning. I wore my oldest clothes, let my beard grow, and generally gave the impression of a man who had lost everything and didn't much care. Emma saw me once by pure chance at a discount grocery store. I was loading bags into my truck when her sleek BMW pulled into the lot. Our eyes met briefly across the parking lot. She was wearing large sunglasses and a silk scarf around her hair, looking like a movie star trying to go incognito. I nodded once in acknowledgement, then climbed into my truck and drove away. Later that evening, I received a text message. Lucas, are you doing okay for money? I can help if you need it. The irony was almost too perfect. I didn't reply. My students noticed the change in me, of course. The beard, the worn clothes, the tired eyes. There were whispers in the hallways, sympathetic glances from other teachers. The school principal, Dr. Martinez, called me into her office one afternoon. Lucas, she said, gesturing for me to sit, I've noticed some changes lately. I want you to know that if you're going through personal difficulties, the school can offer resources, counseling, time off if needed. I appreciate that, I said. Emma and I are getting divorced. It's amicable, but I've moved out while things get settled. Maart Martinez nodded, her expression sympathetic but not pitying. I'd always respected her for that ability to show concern without condescension. I understand. Just know that your work hasn't suffered. In fact, some of your colleagues have mentioned that your teaching seems even more engaged lately. It was true, there was a freedom in no longer carrying the weight of Emma's expectations. In the classroom, I could be fully present, fully invested in the material and the students. No part of me was bracing for criticism at home, for comparisons to imaginary better versions of myself. Thank you, I said. Teaching has been my anchor through all this. Good, she replied. The school community is here for you, Lucas. Don't forget that. I left her office feeling a strange mixture of guilt and gratitude. The deception I was maintaining, not about the divorce, which was real enough, but about my circumstances, was necessary, but it didn't sit well with me to have good people like Dr. Martinez concerned on my behalf. Another item on the ledger of Emma's betrayal. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, machinery set in motion years ago was finally beginning to move. 2 days after signing the divorce papers, I received a call from Mr. Hines, my grandfather's attorney. It's time, Mr. Morgan, he said, his voice as crisp and formal as I remembered from childhood visits to his office. The waiting period has elapsed, and the divorce will soon be final. Your grandfather's instructions can now be followed. We arranged to meet at the private bank downtown where the Morgan family had done business for generations. It was an old building, all marble and oak, a stark contrast to the glass tower where I'd signed away my marriage. Mr. Hines was waiting for me in a private conference room, a leather portfolio on the table before him. He stood as I entered, extending his hand. Lucas, it's good to see you again. You look very much like your grandfather. Thank you, I said, taking the offered seat across from him. I appreciate you handling all this so discreetly. He nodded, opening the portfolio. Discretion has always been the Morgan way. Your grandfather was very specific about the terms of his estate. He wanted to ensure that the family legacy was protected. And the name change? I asked. Was that his idea as well? Indeed. He suggested it when you told him about your marriage concerns. A precautionary measure, he called it. Reverting to your mother's maiden name was a way to protect the assets until they could be properly secured. I thought back to that conversation 5 years ago. I'd been married to Emma for only a year, but already I'd noticed her growing dissatisfaction, her constant comparisons between our life and the glamorous existences she followed online. My grandfather had listened quietly, then suggested the name change as a family tradition. The trust is quite substantial, Mr. Hines continued, laying out documents for my review. Your grandfather continued to invest wisely until his final days. The portfolio includes multiple properties across the Northeast, significant stock holdings, and of course, the family foundation. I scanned the papers, the numbers swimming before my eyes. 8 figures, more money than I could spend in a lifetime. And the condition, I asked, has been met. The divorce will be final next week, and Mrs. Reed has no legal claim to anything bearing the Morgan name. The trust activates fully at that time. He slid a small envelope across the table. Your grandfather also left this for you. He asked that it be delivered when the trust was activated. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. Inside was a single key and a handwritten note. Lucas, if you're reading this, you've shown the patience and foresight that a Morgan requires. The key opens the lake house study. What you find there is your true inheritance. Use it wisely. With pride, grandfather, I folded the note carefully and put it back in the envelope. Thank you, Mr. Hines. What happens now? Now, Mr. Morgan, you decide how you wish to proceed. The foundation requires attention, of course. There are board meetings, investment decisions to be made, but none of that is urgent. Your grandfather ensured everything would run smoothly during any transition period. I nodded, thinking, I'd like to maintain a low profile for now, at least until the divorce is completely finalized. Of course, however, there is one matter that may make that difficult. He passed me another document. The annual foundation gala is scheduled for next month. As the new head of the Morgan family, your presence would be expected. I looked at the invitation. The Morgan Cultural Heritage Foundation annual gala, a black tie event attended by local politicians, business leaders, and socialites. Exactly the kind of event Emma would have loved. I'll be there, I said, sliding the invitation into my pocket. But until then, I'd prefer if my new position remained confidential. Understood, Mr. Morgan, though I should warn you there will likely be some press coverage of the transition. Business journals, local news. Nothing excessive, but enough to notice. I smiled. That's fine. By then it won't matter anymore. As I left the bank, the contrast between my two lives couldn't have been more stark. In one, I was Lucas Reed, divorced school teacher living in a borrowed cabin, driving a truck that was more rust than metal. In the other, I was Lucas Morgan, heir to a fortune, future head of a prestigious foundation. Both were real parts of me, but Emma had only ever wanted to see the former. That night, I drove out to the lake house for the first time since my grandfather's death. It stood as I remembered, a sprawling cedar and stone structure nestled among pine trees overlooking the water. The sunset painted the lake copper and gold as I walked up the path to the front door. The house smelled of cedar and memories. I moved through the familiar rooms like a ghost revisiting its haunts. The living room with its massive stone fireplace. The kitchen where my grandmother had taught me to make her famous apple pie. The sunroom where my grandfather and I had played chess on Sunday afternoons. And finally, the study. I slipped the key from my pocket and opened the heavy oak door. The room was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits. Walls lined with books, the massive desk, the view of the lake stretching out beyond the windows. But now it was mine. All mine. The article appeared in the Rochester Business Journal exactly 3 days after my divorce was finalized. I was at the lake house, my grandfather's sanctuary and now mine, exploring the study that the key had opened. The room was everything I remembered from childhood visits. Walls lined with books, the massive oak desk, the view of the lake stretching out beyond the windows. My phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications. I ignored it at first, absorbed in the contents of the desk drawers, family photographs, handwritten journals, a collection of vintage watches. Each item a piece of the Morgan legacy, preserved for generations. When I finally checked my phone, there were missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, text messages from old friends, and an email from Mr. Hines with a link to the article. Mysterious millionaire philanthropist Lucas Morgan, the new face of cultural heritage. The article was detailed, describing the Morgan family's long history in Rochester, their contributions to the city's development, and the substantial charitable foundation that had supported arts and education for decades. It mentioned that I, Lucas Morgan, grandson of the late William Morgan, would now be taking over as head of the family in the foundation. There was even a photograph taken at my grandfather's funeral 2 years ago. I stood beside his casket, face solemn, unrecognizable to most who knew me now, with my clean-shaven face and tailored suit. I had just finished reading when my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. "Hello, Emma." There was breathing on the other end, fast and irregular, before she spoke. "Lucas, is this really you?" "Yes, it's me." "This article about Lucas Morgan, that's you?" "Yes." A choked sound, something between a laugh and a sob. "But you're Lucas Reed, a history teacher. You make furniture in your garage." "I was Lucas Reed. I changed my name back to Morgan after my grandfather died. And yes, I teach history and make furniture. I also happen to be the heir to the Morgan estate." Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally whispered. "All these years, you let me believe." "Believe what, Emma? That you married a simple teacher with no prospects? That's exactly who I was. The money was my grandfather's, not mine." "But you must have known you would inherit." "I knew there was a trust. I didn't know the details until recently." This wasn't entirely true, but it was close enough. "Not that it would have mattered to you, right? You didn't leave me for being poor. You left me for being ordinary." Another silence. "Can we meet?" she asked, her voice steadier now. "To talk. There's so much I want to say to you." I considered refusing, but curiosity got the better of me. "Fine, the coffee shop on Main Street. Tomorrow at noon." "Thank you, Lucas." I ended the call before she could finish, turning back to my grandfather's desk. Among the papers was a folder labeled Emma Reed Background. I opened it, not surprised to find a comprehensive investigation report. My grandfather had been thorough, as always. Everything was there. Emma's childhood in a middle-class suburb, her nursing career abandoned after our marriage, her growing obsession with social media influence and lifestyle blogging. Even her affair with Caleb Stewart, complete with photographs of them entering a hotel together 6 months ago. I closed the folder feeling strangely empty. There was no satisfaction in having my suspicions confirmed, no vindication in knowing I'd been right to protect myself, just a hollow space where trust had once lived. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived, exactly on time. I'd chosen it deliberately, public enough to prevent a scene, casual enough that I wouldn't stand out. I wore simple clothes, jeans, a button-down shirt, a light jacket, no outward sign of wealth or status. Emma was already there, seated at a table by the window. She'd clearly dressed to impress, wearing a blue dress I didn't recognize, hair and makeup immaculate. The diamond earrings I'd given her for our anniversary caught the light as she turned to watch me approach. "Lucas," she said, rising slightly before thinking better of it and sinking back into her chair. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from her, noting the 2 coffee cups already on the table. "You remembered my order?" "Of course," she said, pushing a mug toward me, black with 1 sugar. "Some things you don't forget after 8 years of marriage." I took a sip, watching her over the rim of the cup. She was nervous, fingers tapping against her own mug, eyes darting between my face and the window beside us. "You look good," she offered. "Different, but good." "What did you want to talk about, Emma?" She flinched slightly at my directness. I wanted to apologize for how things ended between us, for what I said about you, about our marriage." "Apology accepted," I said flatly. "Is that all?" Her eyes widened. "Lucas, please, I'm trying here. I made a terrible mistake. I didn't know, I never imagined." "That I was secretly wealthy, that's your mistake?" "Not the lying, not the affair with Caleb, not the years of making me feel like I was never good enough for you. Just that you didn't realize I had money." She paled. "You knew about Caleb?" "I suspected. Now I know for certain." "It wasn't serious," she said quickly. "It was a mistake. I was confused, feeling trapped. He made me feel special, wanted, and I didn't. It wasn't the same. You were always so content with teaching, with your woodworking, with our simple life. I wanted more." And now, her eyes met mine, suddenly direct. Now I realize what I threw away. Not the money, Lucas. You. Your steadiness, your kindness, the way you always supported me, even when I was chasing silly dreams. I took another sip of coffee, considering her words. There was a time when this conversation would have meant everything to me, when I would have given anything to hear Emma say she'd made a mistake, that she still loved me. Now I felt nothing but a distant sadness for what might have been. The divorce is final, Emma. We've both moved on. Have we? She asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I withdrew it before she could make contact. Lucas, we could start over, a fresh beginning. I know I hurt you, but we had something real once. We could have it again. I shook my head. No, Emma, we can't. What we had wasn't real. It was a fantasy, your fantasy of who you wanted to be, my fantasy of who I thought you were. Neither of us was being honest. That's not true, she insisted, leaning forward. I loved you. I still love you. Or do you love the idea of being Mrs. Morgan now, of having access to the lifestyle you always wanted? She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. Isn't it? 2 weeks ago, you couldn't wait to be rid of me. Nothing has changed except you found out I have money. Everything has changed. I made a horrible mistake. I was confused listening to my mother, to Caleb. They filled my head with all these ideas about what my life should be. And now you've changed your mind just like that? Yes. Tears welled in her eyes. Lucas, please, give me another chance. Let me prove to you that I mean it. I studied her face, searching for sincerity. Perhaps it was there, buried beneath layers of calculation and self-interest. Perhaps, in her own way, Emma did regret her choices. But it was too late. I'm sorry, Emma. The answer is no. She brushed away tears, her composure cracking. Is there someone else? Is that it? I almost laughed. No, there's no one else. This isn't about another person. It's about us. About trust. You broke something that can't be fixed. Anything can be fixed if both people want it enough. That's just it. I don't want it anymore. I stood up, leaving my coffee half finished. Goodbye, Emma. I wish you well, truly, but we're done. I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back, though I could feel her eyes on me through the window. The spring air was fresh after the rain, carrying the scent of new beginnings. For the first time in months, I felt completely free. I drove straight from the coffee shop to East High, arriving just as my afternoon class was ending. The students filed out, greeting me with various levels of enthusiasm. A few lingered, asking questions about the upcoming test or chatting about the latest developments in their teenage lives. Normal, everyday moments that suddenly seemed precious in their simplicity. After the last student left, I sat at my desk, grading papers with a focus that had eluded me for days. There was something cleansing about the mundane task, about circling grammar errors and scribbling encouraging notes in margins. This was real life, not the drama with Emma, not even the inheritance waiting for me. Just a teacher doing his job, making a small difference in young lives. Dr. Martinez appeared in my doorway as I was finishing the last essay. Lucas, got a minute? Of course, I said, setting aside my red pen. What's up? She entered, closing the door behind her. I just got an interesting call from the Morgan Cultural Heritage Foundation. They're offering to fund a new history program for our district. State-of-the-art resources, guest speakers, field trips, the works. She paused, studying my face. The funny thing is, they specifically mentioned you as the teacher who would be heading the program. I kept my expression neutral. That is interesting. I don't know anyone at the foundation. No? She smiled, not quite believing me. Well, regardless, it's an amazing opportunity for our students. I told them we'd be delighted to accept. That's great news, I said. The kids will benefit enormously. Dr. Martinez nodded, hand on the doorknob. Yes, they will. Oh, and Lucas, whatever's going on in your life right now, I hope it works out for the best. After she left, I sat for a long time, thinking about masks and identities, about the different roles we all play. Lucas Reed and Lucas Morgan, two sides of the same coin, both equally real. Emma had rejected one without ever knowing the other existed. Her loss. The call from Brett Donovan came 3 days later. I was at the lake house working on restoring an antique writing desk I'd found in one of the storage rooms. Mr. Reed, he began, his tone all business. Or should I say, Mr. Morgan? Mr. Morgan is fine, I replied, setting down my sandpaper. What can I do for you, Mr. Donovan? My client, Mrs. Reed, has raised concerns about the divorce settlement and specifically about potentially hidden assets that were not disclosed during proceedings. I had been expecting this. I disclosed all assets held under the name Lucas Reed, which was all that was legally required. But you were aware of your inheritance at the time of the settlement negotiations. I was aware of a family trust that would eventually come to me, yes, but at the time of our divorce, I had no control over or access to those assets. They were not mine to disclose. A semantic distinction at best, Brett said, his tone hardening. Mrs. Reed feels misled and is considering legal action to reopen the settlement. She's welcome to try, I said calmly, but I suggest you research the Morgan Family Trust carefully before filing anything. It was established in 1948 with very specific terms regarding marital claims. The trust only activated after the divorce was final, and only because there were no outstanding legal or financial connections between myself and any former spouse. Had Emma contested the divorce or sought alimony, the trust would have remained dormant. Silence on the other end as Brett processed this information. Furthermore, I continued, I changed my name to Morgan 2 years ago, well before any divorce proceedings. Any assets held under that name are separate from my identity as Lucas Reed, which was my legal name during my marriage to Emma. Mr. Hines has all the documentation ready should this go to court. You planned this, Brett said, his voice a mixture of anger and reluctant admiration. All of it. The quick divorce, giving her everything. I planned to protect my family's legacy, yes. As for giving Emma everything, that was sincere. I wanted nothing from that marriage except a clean break. More silence, then a heavy sigh. I'll discuss options with my client, but off the record, Mr. Morgan, this won't go anywhere. Your grandfather's lawyers were too thorough. They've had generations of practice, I replied. Good day, Mr. Donovan. I hung up and returned to my woodworking, finding peace in the rhythm of sandpaper against wood. Some things, once broken, could be restored with enough care and patience. Others, like trust, were far more difficult to repair. The next day I received a furious text from Emma. You lied to me all those years pretending to be someone you weren't. I'm going to fight this, Lucas. You owe me. I didn't respond. There was no point. Brett would explain the legal realities to her eventually, and she would have to accept that her grand plan had backfired spectacularly. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Instead, I focused on preparations for the foundation gala. A new suit was ordered, invitations reviewed, speech drafted. Mr. Hines arranged meetings with key board members beforehand, ensuring I was properly introduced to the people who had managed my grandfather's legacy in his absence. They're impressed with your background and education, Mr. Hines told me that after one such meeting. Your grandfather always said you had a natural talent for teaching. They believe you'll bring a fresh perspective to the Foundation's educational initiatives. That's my hope, I replied. There's so much that could be done, especially in underserved districts. The day before the gala, I submitted my resignation to East High, effective at the end of the school year. Dr. Martinez accepted it with a knowing smile. I had a feeling this was coming, she said. The Morgan Foundation's new education director needs to focus on his expanded responsibilities. You knew? I asked, surprised. She laughed. Lucas, I've been in education for 30 years. I know how to do research. The timing of your divorce, the Foundation's sudden interest in our school, it wasn't hard to connect the dots. She patted my hand. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. And I expect preferential treatment for East High in all future Foundation grants. I grinned. Absolutely guaranteed. It was a relief somehow to have someone know both sides of me and accept them equally. Perhaps that was what I'd always wanted from Emma, to be seen completely and loved anyway. Something she had never been capable of giving. The Morgan Foundation Gala was held at the Rochester Museum of Art, a building my great-grandfather had helped fund a century ago. I arrived early, wanting to familiarize myself with the space before guests began to arrive. Mr. Hines met me at the entrance, resplendent in a tuxedo that looked identical to the one I remembered him wearing at similar events decades ago. "Mr. Morgan," he said, bowing slightly, "everything is prepared. The board members are eager to meet you officially, though several remember you from your visits with your grandfather." "Thank you, Mr. Hines. I appreciate your guidance through all this." He nodded, a rare smile crossing his features. "It has been my honor to serve the Morgan family. Your grandfather would be proud of how you've handled yourself." We walked through the museum galleries, stopping occasionally to admire a painting or sculpture. Many bore small plaques acknowledging donations from the Morgan Foundation. My family's legacy, preserved in art and culture. "There will be a brief ceremony after dinner," Mr. Hines explained as we entered the main hall, where tables had been arranged around a central stage. "Just a few words to introduce you as the new head of the foundation. Nothing too formal." "I prepared some remarks," I assured him. "Brief but appropriate." "Excellent. Here come the first guests." The evening passed in a blur of introductions and conversations. Board members, local politicians, business leaders, all eager to meet the newest Morgan to take the helm of the foundation. I played my part, shaking hands, making small talk, accepting congratulations with gracious nods. It was during the dinner, as I was engaged in conversation with the museum director, that I saw her. Emma standing near the entrance, wearing a black gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. She wasn't on the guest list I'd checked personally, which meant she had either talked her way in or come as someone's plus one. Our eyes met across the room. She offered a tentative smile, which I did not return. Instead, I excused myself from my conversation and made my way toward her, threading through tables and guests with determined strides. "You shouldn't be here," I said when I reached her, keeping my voice low. "I needed to see you," she replied. "You haven't answered my calls or messages." "Because there's nothing left to say, Emma. Please leave. Not until you hear me out." Her hand caught my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Lucas, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I know that now. But everyone deserves a second chance." "Not everyone," I said, gently removing her hand. "Some mistakes can't be undone." "What about forgiveness? Isn't that what your grandfather taught you? What your precious family stands for with all this charity work?" I shook my head. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about consequences. You made your choice, Emma. Now you have to live with it." Her expression hardened. "So that's it? You get to play the wounded husband, inherit millions, and leave me with nothing? After 8 years together? You got exactly what you asked for in the divorce. The house, the car, everything. What more do you want?" "I want you," she hissed, her composure cracking. "The man I married, the man I loved. That man doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did." She laughed, a brittle sound that drew glances from nearby guests. "So this is your revenge? Making me see what I gave up? Flaunting your new life in my face?" "No, Emma, this isn't about you at all. That's what you never understood. My life, my choices, they were never centered around you the way yours were around me." "Mr. Morgan?" A voice interrupted us. It was Mr. Hines. "They're ready for your speech." I nodded. "Thank you. I'll be right there." Turning back to Emma, I kept my voice gentle but firm. "Goodbye, Emma. Please don't contact me again." I walked away, not waiting for her response. As I took the stage and approached the podium, I caught sight of her slipping out a side door, her black dress vanishing into the darkness beyond. "Good evening," I began, surveying the assembled guests. "It is with profound gratitude and humility that I address you tonight as the new steward of the Morgan Foundation." The speech went well, judging by the applause that followed. I spoke of honoring my grandfather's legacy while bringing new energy and ideas to the foundation, of expanding educational programs, supporting local artists, preserving Rochester's cultural heritage. Simple, sincere words that seemed to resonate with the audience. Afterward, there were more handshakes, more congratulations. Several people mentioned they'd seen Emma leave and asked if everything was all right. I deflected politely, attributing her presence and abrupt departure to a misunderstanding. No need to air our dirty laundry in public. By midnight, the gala was winding down. Guests were departing in pairs and small groups, the servers beginning to clear tables. I found myself alone for a moment, standing by a large window overlooking the museum gardens. The night was clear, stars visible above the city lights. I felt strangely at peace. "She won't trouble you again," Mr. Hines said, appearing at my elbow with his uncanny timing. "I've arranged for security to be aware of her appearance. Should she attempt to contact you at the foundation or any official functions, she'll be politely but firmly escorted away." "Thank you," I said, though I doubt she'll try again. Emma has always known when to cut her losses. "Indeed." He paused, then added, "Your grandfather faced similar challenges after your grandmother's passing. There were those who sought his company primarily for the Morgan name and fortune. How did he handle it? With the same quiet dignity you've shown. He understood that true relationships, friendship, love, loyalty cannot be bought or sold. They must be earned through character and actions." I nodded, thinking of my students, of Dr. Martinez, of the few genuine friendships I'd maintained over the years. None of them cared about my family name or bank account. They valued me for who I was, not what I had. "Your grandfather would be proud," Mr. Hines said again, patting my shoulder. "Very proud indeed." The letter arrived a week after the gala, delivered by courier to the lake house. Emma's handwriting on the envelope was as familiar as my own. For a moment I considered returning it unopened, but curiosity prevailed. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery, covered in her flowing script. "Lucas, I won't bother you again after this. I promise. But I needed to say some things that I couldn't express properly when we met. First, I am truly sorry, not just for leaving, but for how I treated you during our marriage. You deserve better. You deserve someone who appreciated your kindness, your patience, your integrity. All the qualities I was too blind to value until it was too late. Second, I want you to know that Caleb is gone. Not that it matters to you now, but he left as soon as the article about you appeared. Apparently, his big cryptocurrency ventures were mostly talk. He's moved on to his next target, I suppose. My mother says I should have known better. She's right for once. Last, I hope you find happiness, Lucas. Real happiness, with someone who loves you for exactly who you are, not what you have or what you can provide. I thought that person was me once. I wish it still could be. With regret and love, Emma." I folded the letter carefully and returned it to its envelope. Then I walked to my grandfather's desk, opened the bottom drawer, and placed it inside, alongside the folder of information about Emma and our marriage. A chapter closed, filed away with the past. That evening, I sat on the dock behind the lake house, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson. A storm was brewing on the horizon, dark clouds gathering against the fading light. There would be rain before morning. My phone vibrated with a text message from Mr. Hines. "Foundation Board approved your proposal for the new education initiative. Congratulations." I smiled, typing a quick thank you in response. The initiative would fund history programs in public schools across the county, providing resources for teachers like me who worked with limited budgets but unlimited passion. It was just the beginning of what I planned to do with the Morgan legacy.